let's talk about the differences in models of violins. A student model many times will look more orange or yellow in color, not always, but they're usually very shiny. And you'll notice that the lines around here, the purfling, are just drawn on. They're just drawn on. And if there happen to be, this one doesn't have any flaming in the back, but if there happen to be little stripes in the back, if I look through the F-hole circles to the inside, I would see there really aren't any flames on the inside of the wood, that the flame is just painted. And so what I want to be looking for a quality violin, something that's maybe, even though this one doesn't look as new and shiny, this one's an older instrument. It has a few cracks, but they're not coming apart and they have been repaired. But what you'll notice about this one is if you look at the back, it has flaming on it. And you can see the little lines. If you were able to look inside, you would notice that you can actually see those lines right on through the inside of the violin. That means you have a little more high quality wood. If the varnish is hand varnished and it doesn't look as shiny as this one's a little bit shiny, mostly in the lights, but not as shiny as this one. Right? So that's a little bit higher quality instrument. And you'll also notice that these ones have the 4 fine tuners on the bottom. When you go to check out your violin, you want to ever so slightly turn each fine tuner to make sure that they turn and work properly. You can also take the farthest peg, the bottom peg on the left-hand side, and turn it towards you to make sure that it turns nice and smooth. You don't want to turn the pegs away from you at this point if you haven't learned how to tune and you make the notes sharper by turning away from you towards the scroll. You could very easily break a string on your instrument, but you do want to check to make sure that the pegs are turning and working. Or if you go to a music store, it's a pretty good chance that that violin's going to be in good working order. Now, when you get your instrument, it should come with both a case and a bow in the same size. And so what you want to look for in the bow is you want to look straight down the bow and make sure that it's straight, that it doesn't bend off to the side this way or this way. You also want to make sure that the bow will lefty loosen and righty tighten, right? So we want to make sure that those hairs loosen and tighten. When the hairs are loose, and you have just 1 or 2 away from the pack, you want to make sure that your bow has a nice curve to it. You don't want a bow that's straight or bent this direction. That means that it's been left too tight for too long. Also, if you can't tighten and loosen the hair, that bow has been left too tight. You're also going to want to make sure that you have a good, what we call hank of hair. You want to have a full amount of hair across. If it looks like all your hair is bunched up together tight, then a lot of times the little wooden piece behind the hair, called the plug, can slip out if you live in dry weather. And when that slips out, all the hair comes together. It's pretty easy to take it to a luthier, a violin repairman, and have them put the plug back in. But if you notice the plug is still there, but you don't have much hair, that bow probably needs what we call a rehair. It needs a new set of hair. For a beginning bow, it can cost more to get new hair in your bow than it can to get a whole new bow. At this point, I usually send my students to Amazon to get a fun colored bow. Now that you've determined what size instrument you need, you've been able to tell if you have a quality instrument, let's also talk about how to make sure you get the most value when you're purchasing your instrument. I'm going to strongly encourage you to look to make sure that the corners are on your violin, that they haven't been knocked off. Check to make sure that all the seams are together. Check to make sure that the top of the violin is not coming apart from the bottom. Check to make sure that the strings are off slightly above the fingerboard, not so high that they're hard to press down. Make sure that you've got all the pegs and that they're turnable. And then I strongly encourage you to have 4 independent fine tuners. Some violins come with a tailpiece that have the fine tuners built in. This is okay, but many times those built-in fine tuners will stop working. And if one stops working, you have to replace the whole section to get a new working fine tuner. And these individual ones that are added individually to the tailpiece, they really work the best. Okay, you also want to make sure that you don't have any cracks down the back of your violin. Sometimes we call these a sound post crack. You can get them on the top too. There's a post on the inside of your violin that connects the top to the bottom, and we want to be really careful that you don't have a crack there because that'll buzz pretty bad. The other thing is, remember, when you're buying an instrument or renting, you're better off getting an older instrument that's set up well, or a decent student model. Don't go for the $50 or $60 eBay or Amazon special, because it's gonna cost you a good $100 to $200 to make those working and playable and sound great. And you'd be better off getting the $300 model and having a great violin to start off with. I recommend a Cremona SV150 that's been set up by a luthier, if you have one near you, or you can take it to the music shop. Just want to make sure that your bridge isn't too high, keeping the strings way off the fingerboard. If that happens, sometimes it's hard to press your fingers down. It's a really quick fix and it shouldn't cost very much to do. The only other thing to watch out for is the chin rest. Sometimes they will come loose here and here. And so just know that you can take a chin rest tool or a paper clip and lefty loosen, or more importantly, righty tighten, righty tight. And what you want to do is tighten just a little bit on one side and a little bit on the next side, and switch back and forth just until the chin rest no longer moves. Once the chin rest is secure, you do not want to extra tighten it because it can cause the violin to crack at the end block. Okay, those are some things to look out for when you're purchasing or renting your instrument.